international conferences, specialized workshops, bringing people together to share their best ideas, to learn from each other, because we all have similar challenges. You know, we may have different tools to work with, but chances are you're not alone in trying to solve an environmental problem. There's others in the world that have had these challenges, and INES tries to take that information and share it among everybody. This cooperation enables efficiencies in the development of tools and programs. We facilitate communication, but it also tries to keep raising the level of the best practices for compliance and enforcement. One of these big challenges, and I'm sure many of you face this, and we face it too in the United States, is the political will. The lack of, if you don't have the will to assure compliance with the law, you're going to have a very hard time making progress. You need to get the support, and you know, it can be step by step, but building that political will is a great challenge. I watched the presidential debates in the United States the conventions, and there was almost no mention of environmental protection by either party in the debate. Very small little mention by Obama on clean energy, but the environment continues, unfortunately, to be seen by policymakers as less of a priority. And this is something that we need to reverse this trend. I know we've had some great work on this principle of non-regression, but this is a real problem right now. You know, with all these economic troubles that the world is going on, the environment seems to slip to the bottom of the political will. It's something that we, and this is where INES and IUCN have to work together to try to raise awareness to build that political will around the globe. One of the things that we've also found is by networking, it helps self-worth, and people value, they strengthen numbers. They really do inspire each other to continue to do their job better. You're not out there alone. Sometimes you feel, you know, you're trying to uphold the law either as a citizen bringing a suit or a government agency, that it's very challenging. There is something to be said for peer-to-peer support, and that's one of the things that INES strives to deliver. We do this around the entire regulatory curve. The cycle begins, you have a policy. We want to have protected forests. Okay, we have a policy, but how are we going to protect the forests? We're going to come up with a law. And that law needs to have enforceable provisions. It needs to say who, what, where, and when. How is this law? Who does this law apply to? What does this law say? When does that behavior need? And where is that behavior? Laws must be enforceable. If you don't have enforceable laws from the start, you have no hope of getting a high level of compliance and meeting those higher level sustainable development objectives. Then we get to the implementation side, and that's where it takes money, it takes manpower, it takes resources, intelligence. How do you come up with the right way to balance a budget to meet that credible threat of enforcement? But as we saw before, the enforcement, the stick doesn't always work. Sometimes there's need for the carrot. So we have to come up with a system that will maximize compliance. Credible threat of enforcement with deterrence, but maybe sometimes we need to have that education, that technical assistance, and that's where program implementation comes into play. That's not enough. It doesn't always work. We need to be honest with ourselves. What's working, what's not, developing series of indicators, a feedback mechanism. Is what we're doing working? Is it achieving those goals? And if not, it's got to loop back in to the start, and maybe we need to twist the way our policy is written or the law is developed to try to meet those underlying objectives. INES has done a lot of work with compliance and enforcement indicators which try to measure and manage the implementation of environmental laws around the world. Questions? Just a little pitch here, and I think you covered it. You know, we are involved with people from over 120 countries. I would say 4,000 plus practitioners are active users and participants in INES. We work with national governments primarily, but also the development banks, the secretariats, OECD, the Commission. So we have learned that we can't do it solely from an international level. We really have been implementing our programs through regional compliance and enforcement networks, and it's been a very effective way of managing, because there's a lot of shared problems across regions. We've done a lot of work recently in East Africa. We have a secretariat set up in Nairobi with Uganda, Tanzania, Burundi, Rwanda, Ethiopia, and Zanzibar now has joined this network, and we're finding that they have at least Uganda, Tanzania, and Kenya are at a very similar stage in their environmental legal development. There's a lot of knowledge sharing going back and forth, and cross-border collaboration that we're building through the Compliance and Enforcement Network. You may disagree, some may disagree, but really law must be implemented at the national level. It's great to set these international goals and do that, but it's going to boil down to implementation at national level, and we want to develop this compliance with national environmental laws. And that's where we focus. We try to work with these governments through the regions, but really to their own national situation and circumstance. I know I got you in here by saying this is about prosecutors, but the more I thought about it and the lack of attorneys, this was maybe better for a broader discussion on compliance and enforcement. But these are a few initiatives right now that we have this global network of environmental prosecutors, and it's really an umbrella organization that's going to bring together regional networks of prosecutors to build a global database so they can find contacts when there's cross-border issues. We're going to build capacity building programs. We're taking our Principles of Environmental Enforcement course, and we're tailoring it specifically to prosecutorial issues. Talked about the Regional Enforcement Network and the Climate Change Expert Group, but we're also doing this principles and capacity building across the whole regulatory cycle, and often through just a little bit more about the prosecutors. And if any of you have prosecutors in your home countries that you think would benefit from talking to other environmental prosecutors, please let me know, and I'd love to link you together. Here's where we operate. Right now there are, I believe, 9 regional networks around the world. There's a huge gap in South America. We don't have a cohesive compliance and enforcement network, yet there are just fantastic prosecutor network that is environmental public prosecutors network throughout Latin America. We have some representatives here in Manolo and from Ecuador, and we are doing work to try to build off of that to expand beyond just the prosecutors. But in Asia, there's a great network called ASIN that works right now. It was originally established with the ADB and USAID work. Now it's working out of Japan with IGIS, which covers, I believe, 12 countries, very active. We're starting to work now in Central Africa, particularly on environmental impact assessment. And we could speak a little further about that, cover some of those holes right now. Networks are sharing. It's not just a north to south collaboration. This goes all different directions. There's knowledge that can be learned in both directions, and so we're bringing the regions together. We do that through our international conferences.
What about North America?
The CEC.
Because we have the enforcement working group, no? Perfect.
Right there.
Thank you.
Might have been the original.
Oh,
That was created by treaty, and we're seeing it also in Central America with CAFTA,
Yeah.
that there are often economic binding agreements that help facilitate, and I don't want to be naive. This takes some money and some resources to get good people on the ground to make these networks work. Why East Africa is working is because we got a fantastic guy named Jerry Opondo sitting in Nima right now in Kenya, working his tail off, hustling to connect all the dots and making it work. But that's one of the challenges. But it's leverage. The ability for these countries to share information and continue to develop their environmental regulatory systems is invaluable. It's a small investment, but in these times, it's not easy to get even a single dollar towards environmental protection. So we all need to state our case and frame our case better on the value of leverage. I'm just going to focus on a few things that have come out of this network in East Africa recently. INES first went in there 3 years ago and conducted an initial organizational meeting. And there's been some very interesting results. Not only do we do international networking, we do intra-governmental networking, so that the Wildlife Service, the customs agencies, the environmental protection agencies, the police, the agriculture department within a nation state, we network with them. It paid incredible dividends recently, and Marco, maybe you could tell a little more about the aloe case in that NEMA and Kenyan Wildlife Service were able to shut down this illegal aloe extraction. But the relationships, they didn't go through the formal ties that sometimes take too much time to catch the bad guys. There was now already established relationships from the networking activities, which enabled the person in NEMA to pick up the phone and call the Kenyan Wildlife Service, who called the person at Interpol, who called CITES, and all of a sudden they had a rapid, swift response to shut down this illegal aloe extraction plant. Same basic type. They seized all this ozone depleting substance that were being illegally shipped out of Kenya. So we're seeing things that we did not necessarily expect initially when we brought the network, which we thought was going to be really this regional collaboration. It actually led to better enforcement at the national level, which is really some of the ultimate goals. We also do something with seaport security, and we've done joint inspections, and it's really been a very successful initiative where about a dozen countries have gotten together and conducted a series of inspections of cargo containers at seaports in their respective countries, have been sharing results, techniques, practices, and it's led to a better understanding of what works and what doesn't work. When you have a huge seaport and you can only maybe inspect, less than 1% of the containers, how do we target? How do we prioritize better? These are some of the things that are coming about. This is for those who really want to dig deep into our library online. There is just incredible years of compilation, about 20 some odd years of compilation of best practices for inspectors, for the basic principles of environmental enforcement. There's a course on water governance. We have a whole training on indicators, measuring and managing your compliance and enforcement activities. And I encourage you all to check it out. And that's me. And I would like to open it up the floor to anybody who has any questions. I'll even give you a card. There. Got your camera. Perfect. Please, and introduce yourself.
Hello. Thank you. My name is Mangalman Shakir, and I am chairman of the Wildlife Watch Group based in Kathmandu. Though I didn't go through the entire your presentations, but I came to attend this workshop, which I found a kind of relevance with our recent initiative. I hope is directly linked with you. It's a question, but it's a kind of that how we can link that we recently initiated one initiative, which is wildlife law enforcement in Nepal, engaging the young women lawyers. So we have recently carried out a workshop, and the purpose of that workshop is to train the future lawyers, particularly the women. So we picked up the law students who has shown the particular interest on the wildlife and environment related law enforcement, and we have now at the moment the 10 enrolled in the program. So now my comment or question here is that how we can link this initiative with this INC, or because they are very fresh law students and need to give trainings and lots of other exposures on it. And the first, we want to focus on the wildlife law and the other environmental law enforcement issues related to Nepal. Thank you.
Yes, that's a very good. It's a very good question. How to link to us? We should correspond. Tell us what your needs are. We're going to have to figure out, how we can be responsive to what you're looking for training for others, because resources are a challenge. So we need to figure out how to support the implementation of a training program. But the materials are all free. Everything is available online.
Yes, I know. The online resources we will definitely get by login. But one immediate future steps that we have foreseen is to, you may have knowledge that in our case, the park wardens, the national park wardens, has also some sort of a judiciary power. So they can arrest the people, and they can send them directly to the prison, and they can the offenders only can appeal in the appellate court, and subsequently could also go to Supreme Court. So there are lots of cases piling up in the different national parks. So at the first exposure and first steps toward this is to digging out all the cases related to wildlife and environment law offending, and then looking into them by those students. Because what we found is, after looking into the case studies, that those offenders who can afford to hire a lawyer, they can easily come out from the prison. And so the government prosecutors are not that, I won't say capable, but they are not that much smart enough to, debate on behalf of the argument. So only those who cannot afford, basically, are those, in grounds. So these things we want to do. And this, I think, we're going to be a new one. So we need, this is a very fresh program that we start with the future women lawyers, particularly, making them ready for the law enforcement and wildlife enforcement. Thank you.
Thank you. Please introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Ana Casio from Fundación Ambiente y Recursos Naturales in Argentina, an ICA member. And one particular necessity we have a lot, but regarding to the public prosecutors, is as regards to fauna trafficking. I don't know if that's a common issue in other places, but usually prosecutors do not worry about that. They say, well, I have other worries like drug trafficking, so do not come to me about this animal that might be even protected at the national level, like we have with the jaguar. There are only 200 jaguars are left in the north of Argentina, there's a lot of poaching of jaguars, and still we have the law protecting them, and the public prosecutors are not really interested in working about that, sometimes because they ignore the law, but some other times because it's just not of their interest. So another trouble is that NGOs cannot be plaintiffs in criminal cases. So in order to push the case, you just depend on the public prosecutors, and if they are not interested, it's in the end a dead case and nothing happens. And nothing happens to the one responsible for poaching. When you're not even supposed to touch the animal, then it's still a victim of poaching. So I wonder if that's an issue as one that you have dealt with.
This is the biggest challenge. This political will issue is, first, the government needs to see this as a priority. But then there's the capacity issue as well to bring the cases. We find that many prosecutors, judges, are afraid of environmental cases. They don't understand them. They don't see it as a priority. And so there's an awareness-raising campaign that needs to be a first step in this. But this is